the case might be, I would be the first to put up my hand. Are you addicted to the internet?
Maybe right after.
Maybe right after. Now, a lot of parents think that the kids are addicted. But let's look at this definition. And this definition is something that we actually curated over the years, right? If there is excessive and uncontrollable consumption of internet-related content that results in the deterioration of a person's mental, physical, and social being, then we can say that they're addicted to the internet.
Yeah.
Because we've heard many stories of, teenagers, even younger, kids, sitting behind the screen, doing very productive things, probably even generating income.
Yeah.
But because they're sitting behind the screen so long, the parents think that they're addicted to the internet. But it has not caused deterioration of the mental, physical, and social well-being.
Yeah.
It actually caused improvement of the financial well-being in some cases, right? So you have to understand that it's contextual, right? And on the right-hand side, I have, some of the different content areas that lead to internet addiction. Do you know you could be addicted to news? This was seen during the COVID pandemic. We probably had that aunt or grandma or mom who every morning would have been sending you sending you something on WhatsApp about a remedy to block COVID or prevent COVID and so on. One, they were never reading the article. They were just looking at the headline. But because we were so engulfed in fear, anything that came to us, we just sending it. Now, what did that do to that individual? It caused mental breakdown because they were scared. Social being, I wasn't going out to interact. Similarly, physical, I locking up myself in a room.
Yeah.
So that's just an extreme example in terms of internet addiction.
But not extreme, because if you add lock up yourself in a room and the characteristic of abuse, that's actually a very abusive behavior.
That is abusive, self-inflicted. Brilliant. Yep, I like that. Now, parents would have come to CyberSafeTT with a request for help because they believe that their kids were addicted to the internet. I have two of those examples listed out here. One happened for a 12-year-old, and the other one happened for a 20-year-old. So you understand why we need to kind of nip things in the bud. So the case for the 12-year-old, the youth was working on an assignment online, probably Google Classroom. And of course, the same laptop that they're using to work on is the same laptop that they're playing on. So you get an invitation to Fortnite. So I said, here's what's going on. I'll just jump up with the kids for a while. Yeah. But before you know it, 2-3 o'clock in the morning hit you. You fall asleep. You forget you had to complete the assignment. You went to school the next day. And you and the whole team who was playing online and supposed to submit the assignment didn't. Yeah. And it happened over and over again. Okay, fine. You might say, listen, all right, no problem. We could deal with that. But what about the 20-year-old who was abroad on scholarship, went into, that whole scenario, knowing that she had a Netflix addiction and just could not have stopped binging these Netflix series. Now, she went away. And in this new country, there are a whole new series that you don't get in Trinidad and Tobago. And that just took the addiction to another level. It was this series after that series. The GPA dropped, she lost her scholarship, and she had to come back home. Again, another very real story. Something that you think is trivial, but potentially change in the course of that person's life. So we might think that internet addiction is, a simple thing to deal with. But if it's not nipped in the bud early on, we can have some problems. Now, we don't have the time today to go through a short version of the internet addiction test, but on the screen now, and we'll share it after as well, you can visit CyberSafeTT's website, and we actually have a very thorough internet addiction test. Anyone can take it, and you can determine whether or not you're either not addicted, you're borderline, or you're there already. And what we will do is put in some intervention strategies. And this is the last slide on this particular topic before we jump straight into the topic of the day, which is cyberbullying. I want the parents to understand that addiction can only be stopped by intervention. So you would know the word addiction is not used by default or by chance.
Sure.
When you hear the word addiction, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Hooked. But when you say somebody addicted to something, first off, what do you think that they're addicted to?
something that has them powerless, so substance.
Substance abuse,
Yeah.
drugs, right? We don't use addiction for internet,
Correct.
but the same way in which it is extremely difficult for someone to stop smoking, stop drinking, come out of that substance abuse, you cannot tell a child or even an adult, put on your phone now, and expect them to do it and they've solved the problem.
Yeah.
Most of the times you need to have some sort of intervention. And this is why addiction to the internet needs to have intervention. And that's where parents come in. So some of these strategies that we would speak about later on includes scheduling downtime. When they should not be on the internet, you need to provide activities, offline activities. Otherwise, it's like you telling an alcoholic, don't drink, and you're leaving the bottle right in front of him. Temptation is there. So when we become so engrossed in the internet, and it almost becomes like a different limb to us, right? It is part of our being. We let our guard down, and when we let our guard down, we sometimes say and do things on the internet that we shouldn't do.
Correct.
Because we have a level of confidence in the space that we operate in. I am almost certain, and I haven't seen your slides, that you might probably present to the folks that, hey, a bully is someone needs to be sort of confident in the space that they're operating in to act that way. Now, they may have other inherent problems, but I have to be confident to bully someone.
Correct.
Right? The same way in which I'm not interacting in the online space, I'm confident. And it's to me, I'm not trivializing regular bullying. You hide it behind a screen so you can have a different persona.
But does that make the person online a lot more cavalier in their approach?
Well, maybe the data might show, right? And I think that the manner in which you can go about cyberbullying on the internet is a little bit vast compared to what you might have to do in traditional face-to-face bullying. Yep. So let's jump straight into it. And this is the topic of the day, and is that of cyberbullying. So one of the words that I want the audience to understand is repeated. So cyberbullying is the repeated bullying with the use of internet-connected technologies. Now, why that's important? Now, our proposed cybercrime bill, when it's defining cyberbullying, it's actually speaking about repeated activities. So if you can't prove that this is something that's happening over and over again, then clearly the law will probably say, hey, that's not cyberbullying. That might just be a bad child, right? Now, I know we had some questions submitted by the audience prior to it, and one of them was related to that. How do you really define cyberbullying? So one of the key characteristics is this repeated bullying or repeated activity of making someone feel inferior on the internet. Now, we do have some worrying and sad statistics as well. Even though we struggle to get real statistics in Trinidad and Tobago on occasion, at least over the last 2 years, we've had 2 cases that CyberSafeTT has been involved in, which ultimately led to suicide because of cyberbullying. And that's very worrying. Anything more than 0 is worrying. Yeah. And other global statistics would be like 1 in 5 young people would have indicated that they have either witnessed cyberbullying or even been a cyberbullying, right? In 2013-14 thereabouts, we would have partnered with the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, and we did a survey of over 3,000 students in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's where we got those statistics from. And I'm almost certain if I were to do a similar survey now, it might be 1 in 2. 1 in 2 students either would have experienced or be a victim of cyberbullying. Because as I was explaining to a different audience some time ago, our culture, which we love so much, also comes to bite us, in the most inopportune time. We tend to say things that are really, not accepted in the global space.
No.
Right? And, we take that same attitude on the internet, and it becomes a whole different, kettle of fish. Yeah. So I have this really nice diagram that I think sort of presents a comparison of traditional bullying and cyberbullying. And I know you're going to touch on this in more detail. But the underlying concept is that they're going to, merge into serious long-term damage regardless, whether it is traditional bullying or cyberbullying. Now, again, not trivializing traditional bullying, but it can happen face-to-face in a school, and you might be able to identify the person and maybe take corrective action within a shorter space of time. But with cyberbullying, I could create a fake life, in your personal life, and you could kind of get a sense of the stresses associated with just doing something that you're supposed to like to do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say like to do. You have to do. I don't think we could operate in 2025 and beyond without being on the internet. You need to be there, right? You're connected all the time, right? Whether it's the work or play. So again, the diagram sort of explains that you might be safe or feel safe at home because the bully not going to follow you home. Well, we hope not, right?
Yeah.
Right. In traditional bullying. But in cyberbullying, you really can't run away from it. So to a certain extent, maybe the consequences of cyberbullying might be a little bit grave. But at the end of the day, our aim is to educate and to curtail and or curb this as much as possible.
What stand out to me there is the all day, all night.
All day, all night.
Yeah. That means that if that's a space I have to exist in, then how am I to function when you are always there?
You're always there. And you know what? With AI and scripting, I can be sleeping, but still bullying somebody. Yeah. But we don't have time to get too deep into that today. But these are things that we need to be very cognizant and aware of, right? So what are some signs of cyberbullying? Because parents would probably be really, really interested in finding out whether or not, my kid is being cyberbullied. And, you would probably not realize it. And I'll say something, parents might get a little upset. We might not interact with our kids as much as we should be doing.
Yeah.
We're busy with work. I drop off the kids at school, right? So I'm at work. I might pick them up, or they might get a drop home. As soon as I come back home, I have to cook. I have to do this, I have to do next. They go to do their work. I don't have any conversation that I should be having. When we have the opportunity to sit behind the table, and I can say, hey, Kirk, how was your day? We don't do that, You know what happens instead? Fork in one hand, phone in the next hand. So we've lost that opportunity to connect. Finish eat, I need to finish up homework, I need to send some emails, boom, we go to sleep, and the day starts again. Now, I went through that intentionally because I might have jumped into the solutions. You see, conversation and intervention, that's a key to solving a lot of problems that we experience online. So let's look at some of the signs. Emotional distress. And this would probably be very similar to some of the traditional bullying signs as well. So we have emotional distress. You will probably find that, mood swings, again, angry or anxious when we either, take away the device or bring the device for them to use. Irritability or frustration. A point to note, and I think this is probably one of the more glaring ones, changing in online behavior. So you might find last week, you could peel them away from the machine. They game in 24/7, whatever the case might be. All of a sudden, they're just there, probably watching Netflix, or they refuse to do things that they've done before.
Correct.
Almost as if they are afraid, one would say, to actually go online. So changes in online behavior. Now, this could lead us on a whole different part in terms of digital human trafficking and so on. But changes in online behavior is something that you want to be very cognizant of, because it could have far-reaching consequences.
Well, you're saying the change will not be a natural change.
No. This is something that you should pick up almost immediately. It's unnatural. Yeah. The last point, hesitation to discuss online interactions and friendships, that might probably be par for the course. You might not find that the average teen might be open to discussing these things with you. But if they are, and you find that it's changing, then again, this is something. And secretive behavior. Now, cyberbullying could take a different turn. Cyberbullying could actually get into some sort of extortion type activities where I might have engaged in some sort of activity with the bully, and the bully is now compelling me to do something at a particular time every night.
Yeah.
And I have to take my laptop or phone and go into the room or go into the space and hide and do something. And parents might not necessarily observe that if you're not looking out for it. You might say, all right, well, you know, they're talking to a friend or they want some quiet. But look at all of the signs that we want to point out today. And, you know, maybe ask some questions. A simple thing as asking a question, you know, can go a long way.
And waiting for the answer.
Academic related, I think that is a given, right? Because again, you know, we are talking about cyberbullying. We are talking about interacting on the device that you have to learn on. You would also have to play on the device as well. Many parents would have tablets or phones that the kids, it might need laptops. And that's the same place that you have to go and interact socially where the bully might be hiding out. And that might be the reason for the academic decline. Not that they're not studying, you know. Again, it's a major psychological shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could now gravitate towards some serious physical symptoms as well, right? And again, these are all offshoot items from, you know, what might have happened before from the psychological perspective. And lastly, social withdrawal. You know, they just kind of really become, you know, this shell. They have not, you know, interacting with individuals, isolation from, you know, friends and family and so on. So let me just go back to these slides to reiterate. Emotional distress, changes in online behavior, academic related issues, so a drop in performance, physical symptoms, and then you have social withdrawal. So we've identified if there's a potential. I'm recommending have conversations with the parents to determine whether or not it is the case. If you found out that that is indeed the case, then let's look at reporting. So now reporting on cyberbullying, and I have two slides. There is one for students and one for parents, right? Because parents also get cyberbullied as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Clearly, going to report it to Jisha. And again, this is actually answering some of the other questions that, you know, we received offline as well, right? So those parents who would have submitted this, you know, this would pertain to you. Of course, if it happens at school, you're going to report it to the teacher or the principal because you need to have that that knowledge, and it should be documented and recorded, right? Because remember what we're looking for. First slide, repeated behavior. So you need to document that this has been happening over and over again, right? And then there's the social media and cybercrime unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And they've been doing a really fantastic job in terms of awareness, in terms of addressing issues and so on. And you could find their information easily on the internet. Now, we may have some teachers in on the conversation today, and of course, parents. I want to bring your attention to the National Schools Code of Conduct. You can Google that and you'll find it in multiple different sources. Even CyberSafeTT has it on our website. Now, the nice thing that I find about the National Schools Code of Conduct, it actually has 2 pages, one dedicated to cyberbullying and one dedicated to social media. And that was fantastic that the government of the day thought that we needed to update the National Schools Code of Conduct to include those things. They went into a few different definitions, one of which I have here, which sort of describes, you know, cyberbullying. All interaction on social media must be courteous, respectful, age-appropriate, non-abusive, and free of dishonorable content. And it goes on to explain what dishonorable content is. More importantly, it shows what can happen if a student has been caught cyberbullying another. You can have things like removal of privileges, made to sign a behavioral contract, and again, the consequences become worse depending on the act itself, right? Yeah. Down to the ultimate expulsion, right? And that's not a point where we want to reach. So that's a reporting mechanism for students. So if you're not getting any headway at the school, which is one of the questions that we received, there is the social media and cybercrime unit. You can even also go to the Children's Association and Childline as well, right? Those are all options in which you can report cyberbullying and appropriate action would be taken. Now for the parents, because as I said, you know, unfortunately, we are also sometimes the victim, right? Your first port of call might definitely be your social media and cybercrime unit, or, you know, you may need to take legal action. Because from the parent perspective, cyberbullying really hovers around 2 main points, particularly in Trinidad and Tobago: defamation of character and reputational damage, right? Yeah. And we tend to see that a lot with our public profiles, yeah, right? Politicians and so on. And then there's the invasion of privacy, which could also mean sharing of inappropriate images of other individuals, right? So this is under the Offenses Against the Persons Act. And precedence has been set. You cannot go online as we used to do just a few years ago and tell somebody anything about their parents, about their business, about the food that they're cooking. No, it's not a joke anymore. And that's what I was referring to in terms of our culture.
Yeah.
I could go walk down the street and tell somebody something, but you do that online, it's a whole different kettle of fish, right? Because now you're talking about emotional distress, defamation of character, reputation damage, and so on. So cyberbullying happens in the adult space as well. And we have seen many different instances. And this next slide will give you an idea where that law, Offenses Against the Person Act, has been called into play and victims were rewarded. I mean, I don't think it is the best approach in terms of you getting rewarded. You had to go through that trauma in the first place.
Correct.
We want to avoid the trauma. But this slide really shows to me that Trinidad and Tobago is maturing in the space of cyberbullying, and the law is taking some sort of approach. So most recent one, a teacher was awarded $800,000 in damages. Now this teacher used to give lessons, and two of the past students, one who happened to be a doctor, went and said something untoward. Mind you, the other person only reposted it. Now let us remember that I always say reposting or sharing is worse than posting itself. It was only because the second doctor or person, I'm not sure if that was a doctor, reposted it, and his following was great that it became viral. And it led to defamation of character of the lessons teacher. $800,000. Now, of course, if you can't pay these fines, that means you're going in jail, right? So one of the articles did mention that. But let's look at top right. Cops charged 3 students with cyberbullying in the last 6 months. And that was April 2024. So again, using National School Code of Conduct, using Offenses Against the Person Act, even our kids are not indemnified from engaging in this activity online.
Yeah.
So parents need to be, very much well aware. Now, I'm coming down to a close of my section, and I had to mention some little strategies to address cyberbullying. Are we speaking of?
Just go back to the last slide.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Could somebody not be aware that they actually inflicting pain upon somebody?
Oh, definitely. And I think it is because of our nature as well.
Yeah.
You might think it's a joke.
Yeah.
We don't often put ourselves in the shoes of the victim.
Yeah.
Right? And here's the other thing. We might think we're saying something in a closed audience. You see this whole perception of privacy and friends group, and I'm just this WhatsApp group that nobody knows.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about online activity, and we might be thinking it's not WhatsApp, but things can happen on WhatsApp. I can take a screenshot and share it, and it goes viral.
Correct.
So within your own little group, you say something, and you're thinking, well, that is 5 people. But the minute you share and it goes viral, your original intent now becomes thrown out the door.
Okay.
Right? And now it's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, that is definitely the case.
Sure.
So going into some of these, again, intervention type of strategies, as a victim, emotional resilience and self-confidence is key. Now, I think this is very difficult, I have to admit, to own and embody. Because if you are a victim and you're being bullied, it's going to be a little difficult for you to exhibit emotional resilience and self-confidence. Because, I mean, sometimes it's simplest of things. It could be, a description of your physical being, of your financial state, of the shoes or backpack that you're wearing, trivial things there, but it can have very negative impact.
Yeah.
So it can really affect your emotions, your self-esteem, and also your mental health. And we know how much mental health issues have, exponentially raised over the last couple of years. So being able to raise emotionally resilient children is something that I think would resonate well with parents today. There are some strategies, and again, we can list these out after, because I'm sure my colleague here might go in a little bit more. But positive self-talk. Listen, just talking on the whole helps. just talking on the whole, perspective talking, bring yourself into the victim's shoes and these type of things, right? And these are all different types of coping mechanisms, such as offline activities, to sort of build self-confidence outside of, just this whole cyberbullying strategy. And again, how we can strengthen self-confidence, different individuals might excel in different areas. So recognize your strengths, learn your skills, learn your qualities and so on. Body language, you might be presenting yourself, interestingly enough, as a victim.
Yeah.
And something as simple as body language, would change that. So now I just want to try and jump straight into some of my other slides. We do have, and I think I mentioned this, so we could probably jump away from this one as well, because I did mention that, relationships start in the internet, grow on the internet, and end on the internet. But what I didn't say was, be mindful that while you're going through this particular process, that you don't share the wrong things, because it's going to impact on your digital footprint. And the things that you say, there was a little cyberbullying, quotes or whatever it is, you upload a meme of someone, all forms part of your digital footprint, which is literally anything, all your trail of interactions on the internet. Have you ever Googled yourself?
Try not to.
You're trying not to. Here's the thing, let me tell you, parents, for the kids, these folks are going to Google them. And these folks could definitely say, hey, I don't want you in my institution.
Yeah.
We've even seen, and we continue to see it, the US government want to see your social media history for the last 5 years. Your digital footprint is more influential or key than you could ever imagine. So last 3 slides in terms of identifying how we could get out of this, right? So we need to keep an eye out. We need to identify, interrupt, and intervene. Yeah. Now, the 3 main topics that we spoke about, cyberbullying, digital footprint, and internet addiction. We have intervention strategies for all of them. And I guess we could outline these and share them in the chat after, right? But for cyberbullying, again, stop, block, and tell, know the tools, know the platform. The platform actually, by the platform, I mean all of these social media spaces, have identified that this is a problem and we can help you solve it, right? Open dialogue, not interrogation. And this one is for the parents, huh?
Yeah.
Even the victim needs to be, not interrogated. And you need to understand that, the different emotions that they're going through. And for your friends that are listening on, peer bystander empowerment. Let's not give the bully more fuel. Let us stand up for our individuals on the internet. In terms of digital footprint, Google yourself, conduct a social media audit, and understand what I like to refer to as the 5 P's of posting. Is it personal info? Then we maybe don't need to share it. Is it a professional image that you're sharing? Because now, listen, with AI, I could take any image of you and doctor it up as I want. So let's try and make that as difficult for individuals as possible. Don't be fooled by privacy levels, because what's on the internet is not entirely private. And then your peer impact in terms of how we can have those consequences, right? And the last one, internet addiction, set screen time arrangements. I personally like tech-free zones. So like you see the dinner table, let's try it for a couple days, right? Just a couple days. No phones at the dinner table.
Good one.
Right? Recognize signs of dependency. I mean, we've seen it many times. Little toddlers, they take away the device and they throw in a tantrum. It should never be that way. So our key takeaways. This is not a one-size-fits-all strategy, right? You need to be in control of your digital footprint. You need to be aware of what you post on the internet, because it can not only impact the victim, which is what we're speaking about today, cyberbullying, but what you post can impact you in your future goals, whether it is to go to university or to even get a visa to travel to a foreign country, right? Parents need to lead by example, because we've seen some inappropriate behaviors by parents on the internet. And communication, in my opinion, is key. So that brings me to the end of my slide today. And I know we want to hand over to my colleague so that you can continue the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
All right, guys, thank you so much, Daren. That was a wealth of information. I think a lot of us probably went at the top of the presentation and then the internet addiction test. But thank you so much for sharing all these stories and what many of us may experience every single day, whether with our friends or children and family members and so on. So I now want to introduce Mr. Kirk Pierre, who will take us through bullying offline, traditional bullying, whether in our schools, workplaces, communities, and so on. So please welcome Kirk Pierre.
Thanks, Marissa. And thanks, Daren. You know, I'm thinking, as I sit here thinking, is it that traditional is now cyber? And what we know as traditional is now outdated?
No, traditional happens, I mean, I think it moves from traditional into cyber,
Yeah. Excellent.
or vice versa. Yeah.
Excellent point. So, you all would have experienced, and thanks for sticking around, and thanks for having us in your space. You would have experienced some conversations this afternoon that may also trigger some things in you all, because I saw some research by a psychologist named Dr. Tracy Van Der Poel, and she said that 30% of the population has been victims of bullying, and 10% of those has been extreme victims of bullying. So 30% is a large amount, and that 10% is an extreme amount. So I want us to take a minute or two and just create a safety plan in your space. Get a document and write some notes in terms of what is one thing you will do to self-soothe if you begin to feel overwhelmed. Some people could rub their ears, some people could do deep breathing. This was one thing that these topics may do to you that you may need to self-soothe. Write it down for a second, right? And you'll use that as a reference point, not only for this afternoon's presentation, but for as work goes on and become more and more. So, for example, pause, take a deep breath, visualize a safe space, try to be comfortable. Step away from the screen if necessary, if this has opened up some stuff for yourself, for the children next to you. Repeat affirmations, for example, I am not a victim, I'm no longer in that space, or if I'm in that space, at the end of the presentation, I'll share some slides in terms of where you could get some help and some support to further deal with some of the situations you're faced with. Try to have that one person right now in your head who you could connect with that is a safe person or a safe place for you. And try to have ensure that person is safe enough not to be non-judgmental. But they may say, well, that little thing making you feel this way, but it's not a little thing as we experience and we know. Are you in the right place? Well, I think based on Daren's presentation and the learning that has taken place for the last 35 minutes, you are in the right place. Because if you experience bullying, if you experience trauma, if you find yourself dealing or feeling numb at this point in time, if you find yourself having a hard time forgiving yourself at this point in time, you may feel any wear and tear every day. You may noticing that your thoughts are repeating itself over and over and over, and we'll come to that as to why that is possible. You may experience a loss of appetite, loss of sleep, or maybe experiencing a loss of appetite, lack of sleep. And we'll come to why your brain is doing that to you. So you may think it's a normal experience, but your brain may actually function in a hyper-aroused or hyper-vigilant manner, which means that something in your space or somebody in your space presents being unsafe. And that's why I asked you about the slide there in terms of cyber, and that is that 24-hour access that somebody could have to you, right? In terms of what that does to somebody who is trying to escape, just cannot escape.
Yeah, because you're behind the screen all the time, right?
More than that, the World Health Organization has ranked Trinidad and Tobago as the third in the region in suicide rate.
Wow.
So this conversation that's hosted here by the CLICO Credit Union is not just a talk we're having a conversation that could probably save lives.
Yeah.
Right? Because third highest, but when you pair for the fact that we always laughing, we always joking, we always smiling, we always partying, then those are two different ends of the coin. So are we truly happy, or are we masking happiness?
That's very deep.
Yeah. I have found that so let's say suicide for me is present as a major problem. I found that gang culture is also one that is big, right? And some people may link that to bullying. That is more aggressive behavior, which is different from bullying. Bullying is more power and control that always includes aggression. But aggressive behavior is not necessarily bullying.
Right.
So I could be aggressive and not a bully. Because in your definition was so rightfully explained, it's a repeated behavior over time. So I am on you all the time. This makes it difficult. Next to gang culture, there's something happening that is invisible but just as potent. Marijuana use and pornography, right? Where we have a host of young men between the ages, let's say 17 and 35 years old, who have isolated themselves because they have become socially awkward, and marijuana and pornography has become their comfort.
Right.
Right. So the cyberspace is not only a bullying space at times, but it has become a place where the socially awkward has find refuge to the detriment of themselves and the wider population as well. Albert Einstein said all of us should ask ourselves a question, right? Do we see the world as a friendly place?
I think everybody has to give a different answer to
Different
that.
answer to that, right? But the answer to that determines a lot of how your brain functions and works. Because one gives your brain sense of optimism, and one sends your brain down a path of defensiveness. What does that defensiveness look like? Could be hyperarousal. So this space that we're sharing right now is a safe space. There's nothing in the place that threat, right? Somebody who's hyperaroused may come into this space and view this space as a threat. Even though no incident occurs that brings pain or harm to that person, the physiological system still goes through the process of
Something triggered.
triggers.
Right.
After a while, your brain stops, let's say no risk down, risk up, no risk down, risk up. After a while, your brain stops doing that and just gets stuck in hyperaroused state.
Right.
So you view everything as problematic, everything as hyperaroused.
Not a good state to be in at all.
No, because it affects your sleep, it affects your appetite, it affects how you actually view being safe. And some things that happen in terms of blood pressure, in terms of diabetes, in terms of other things that could be preventable because of the fact of how the system working and functioning. Let me put you on the spot. If you have to mentally create a safe space, right, for all of us, if you're creating a safe space, let's create a safe room or a safe space. What are 5 things or persons you will put in that safe space? And what are 5 things that will never be in that safe space?
You know, oddly enough, the first thing that comes to my mind of one thing that I would put in that space is my dog.
Yeah.
It'll just make me feel calm. So you might have a puppy, you might have, a kitten or whatever it is, something that kind of, relaxes that pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the other things with my colleague right here,
Yeah.
We have a sort of a resonation in thought. I know if I'm feeling, troubled,
Yeah.
you might have that one person that can come and say, hey, let's have a chat.
So a person that will not deplete your emotional bank at all.
But they have to understand, see, to get to that point.
Correct.
I could list more than 5 things that I wouldn't put in that room, but we'll discuss that, right?
Yeah. And for all of us listening, I want us to just remember this line and make your list. So have your 5 things that go in there and your 5 things that not go in there. Remember, it's an ideal space, huh? So don't let fear, which is defined as trying to avoid bad things from happening, dictate what goes into the space. If the space has to be ideal, then you are the author of the space. There's African saying that goes like, if the story of the jungle is told by the hunter, the animals will never be glorified. So who's telling your story for you will write your story for you and will place you in a place that may not be in your best interest. But if you write a story for yourself, maybe you will place yourself where you say you should be, not where they say you should be. Bullying, repeated aggressive behavior. And this is on the word repeated, right? So which means that let's start with the children. I'm in school And every day, this person comes and dominates me all the time. Now, I use the word dominator because if I'm 12 years old and you are 12 years old and you're coming at me, then the power difference may be the same. So that may not be a domination. That may be somebody who is challenging me differently. But if I'm 12 and you are 8, well, there's 4 of you and 1 of me, and you're repeatedly doing me these things, and the difference in power is what actually distinguishes good
Or even size, right?
or size.
Right. So I remember one of the questions that we had was, I have a very small son.
Yeah.
You know, how can he deal with that? So
Right, yeah. So small son and an assertive son who has the ability to speak for himself limits his chances of being a victim of bullying
Yes.
tremendously.
Correct.
But a big son who is non-vocal, who is probably going to a school that makes him economically different to the rest, who is struggling with a mental health situation that is visible and known,
Right.
makes him 4 times more likely to be bullied.
Fair enough.
Right? So victims actually fall within a particular grouping that makes them targets. Right? For the adults in this space, we haven't left you out there. So in the workplace, repeated and unreasonable behavior directed towards a worker or group of workers that creates a risk to health and safety. Now, people speak about a bad boss or a bad co-worker. I think we need to move away from the term bad and probably call it what it is. Let's use Trinidad. Trinidad over the last 30 years has been through some experiences with crime that has created, in some situations, maybe persons who have lost the ability to regulate their emotions to protect themselves.
Right.
All right. So let's say a 6-year-old child having to leave a crime-ridden area to go to school, and that child this a boy has to hold his sister's hand to go to school, but he has to cross a corpse every day or every so often to go to school. For that boy to reach his destination and his sister, they have to blank out certain things that deal with emotions and feelings after a while.
Desensitized.
Sensitize, dissociate, right? Although that's a good short-term measure to function, after a while it creates a situation whereby you may develop by environmental factors, something called antisocial personality disorders. Grouped into that is almost like sociopathic behavior. So that's why when we check the intensity of crime now, we see that crime now is not just an act. It's almost like a program. So somebody invades a home and they spend a lengthy period of time in that home doing the most horrible things to the person.
Right.
Because the act of sensitizing yourself or somebody saying stop, or I feel for these people has been lost.
Right.
Right? You could actually be in a workplace with somebody who has been through some experiences that means that things that deals with empathy and sympathy no longer
There with them.
there with them. Right?
Right.
So you may not be making this up to yourself. You may actually be a victim of bullying without the recognition that you're a victim of bullying. Right? Because of the power differential, the person will not just stop. Because something in them motivates them to see you in pain.
Yeah.
Right? And it could morph into something like narcissistic type behaviors or other things as well. How do people bully? Again, desire for power and control, low self-esteem or personal issues, influence on peers or the environment. But I found that other issues include persons who very popular bully, and to maintain their popularity, they find that by making you feel less, then they feel better.
And you know, it adds on their social credibility
Correct.
because the lack of empathy by their followers provoke that continued behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I like the word use followers, right? Because some people think that if I'm behaving this way, I will have nobody around me. But it's actually selected behaviors.
Yeah.
So I select who I want to have right? Now, the person who is unregulated and violent and aggressive will not have an audience and will be expelled by a group eventually.
Right.
A bully is a very skillful person,
Of course.
very calculated person, a very social person,
Yeah.
a person who has been found to be very popular, right? Some research has found that if a girl transfers school and that girl matches his social construct of what beauty looks like, the other girls in his school will expel her. Give her a very difficult time.
Difficult time.
Right?
Yeah.
If a boy is an athlete though, and that boy enters into another school, because boys are accommodating to hierarchy,
Yeah.
he will fit in.
He will. Yeah.
He will fit in, right?
He might be revered.
Very revered, right? So it's the difference in terms of boys and girls in terms of
Gotcha.
how we actually view it as
Yeah.
well, and how it's transferred as well, but still painful. So again, it has limited age limits in children. Teasing, name calling, exclusion, physical aggression, often seen in schools, as I said, online spaces and social groups. In adults, verbal abuse, workplace harassment, manipulation, public shaming may occur at work, in families, or even in social community settings. Now, the manipulation is one that is very, very hard to gauge because may at times appear to be as though I'm helping you, but I'm actually inflicting pain.
Yeah.
How to spot that and address that? I tell persons this, right? You enter a workspace and you may function in terms of the fantasy of what the space should be. So I meet a boss, the boss is usually well dressed, because these persons are well dressed, they function from the post, and I view the post as a post of authority. Right? So they store in the fantasy. That person then presents to me a behavior.
Right.
That behavior is then supported by 2 or 3 other supporting behaviors. For victims, it is hard for them to see the new behaviors as the person, and they prefer to see the person in the fantasy of how they met them. What they then do is apply a social construct called benefit of the doubt. That is not a natural thing. That's something that we have developed to try to fit in socially.
Right.
That allows us to see persons in the fantasy of how we want to see them, not in the reality of how they really are.
That's interesting. So is it that you know that this the boss, right,
Right.
or whoever is the higher authority, are they aware?
The boss is aware.
Oh, okay.
The boss is aware because I'm presenting what the post should be,
Yes.
but I'm making it feel a particular way.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
But because of social conditioning, I prefer to see the boss as ideal.
Yeah.
Right? So I apply benefit of doubt until it's too late when I've now trapped into a new function, a new series of
Right.
behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So for all the persons, it's easier for me to deal with the situation if I see it as it is, the reality or the relevancy of what is in front of me, than me stay with the fantasy of who I am. But even in the fantasy phase, right, your cognitive self is saying one thing, but your physiological self is saying, no, red flag, something's happening here. So you're even fighting yourself to see the person as ideal when all your other systems saying something here is a threat or a risk. Right? Common themes across the ages, again, power imbalance, repeated harm, emotional and psychological impact, which means that emotional and psychological impact, key that my level of functioning is not the same level of functioning today as it was yesterday. So I met you yesterday in one state of functioning. Now, after our experience, I'm now this type of person.
Right.
Research shows that we do things, all of us do things for 4 main reasons, right? Let's say the acronym RICE, RICE. Reward, ideology, coercion, which is force, and ego. So 4 main things why we do whatever we do: reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. Out of those 4, Daren, which I think is the number 1 motivator for why we do what we do?
Reward.
Ultimately,
9/3.
yeah. Actually, ideology,
Ideology.
your belief system.
You believe.
So as a bully, I believe that I am better than you.
Right.
So for me to change that belief, you have to present me with some fact that says to me that for me to feel better about myself, or for me to view differently, that I have to see you as an equal.
Right.
That's very, very hard to change. Because number two is ego. For my ego to be stroked, I need to feel as though I'm superior.
Yeah.
So power and control. All right. Ideology is very hard to change, huh?
Because it kind of enshrined in here, right?
Trying in here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So, and where it comes from is debatable in a number of situations.
Yeah.
Right. But unless we confront person's belief system about how they view others, then the problem exists.
Yeah.
And carries on. It matters because adults are often overlooked as victims. So because I'm male and I'm an adult, nobody will believe I'm a victim. A myth, right? Bullying behavior can be carried from childhood into adulthood. So again, because it sometimes involves pretty powerful emotional states: abandonment, rejection, betrayal.
Mhm.
So the group expelled me. So I'm dealing with abandonment, rejection, betrayal. So even as an adult, I seek affirmation from persons who may trigger in me abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. So I've actually made myself a perfect victim.
Right.
Right. So even what I don't want, I do have a template for functioning outside of that situation and functioning. Types of bullying, again, physical, verbal, social, as you so expertly explained, cyber. The impact. Victims may experience, again, anxiety, depression, decreased academic performances. The bystanders participate
Mm-hmm.
from the point of choosing the size of the bully.
It seems to be the easier side to choose.
Yes, at least it's not me. Right? And I participate by joining the, evolutionary psychologists spoke about expulsion. Huh? And they said that for us to have survived coming through the years, being part of the group,
Survival of the fittest, you get rid of the weakest.
with the weakest, right?
Yeah.
Or my survival is tied to being part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
The group threw me out, then I can't survive.
And I'll choose a stronger group.
And I'll choose stronger group.
Yeah.
Right? So although I'm not naturally a bully, for my survival, I join this group and I inflict pain. Because again, at least it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So persons intervening is even in the workplace is difficult because at least the boss not on me. You're on you. I'm just here to take care of myself and my family.
But I'm not doing anything to stop that.
No.
Yeah.
I might even comfort you at the side. But don't talk to me in front of the boss.
Yeah.
The traumatic responses that we have seen both children and adults face, which tell me 3 E's, right? So trauma refers to an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physical or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects. Lasting effects, which means that I have clients that even in the 60s right now still explain and express about those bullying experiences.
That happened childhood.
Right.
Wow.
Right? The life choices and decisions that they would have made
Or based on that.
were based on that. So, for example, some persons got a chance to receive scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
And because persons who were bullies in the primary schools were going to the same college, they denied themselves going to the college, even as adults. Right? So it altered a lot of situations.
That's
right?
tough. Yeah.
So the brain could resolve a number of things. Injustices, we have found is something the brain struggles to resolve.
Self-preservation.
Yeah. But injustices from the place also of, because you did this to me, I struggle to find peace in myself in this act that was done to me.
Mm.
If it's grief, if it's other circumstances, I can deal with it. But this act of an injustice is people need help to kind of move through and work through some of those situations and circumstances.
Gotcha.
So trauma is not a thing that happened, but the effects left within us by what has happened. So those experiences live on, and our brain forms stories about ourselves based on the experience. So the bully said that I am this, and I've lived my life after a while telling myself that I am this, or trying to prove that I'm not that.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually not living. I have spent my time surviving and existing, and life has moved past me.
I like that. Let's repeat that. Trauma is not the thing that happened, but is the effect left within us by our experiences.
Correct.
That requires a
Yeah.
little bit more thinking.
Because
I
after a
think.
while, we start to use our perception and interpretation of the events, and that becomes real.
Yeah.
Not the event itself.
Yep.
And for that to maintain, I have to tell myself a story around those events.
Mm-hmm.
And most likely, the story comes from persons who would have inflicted harm or pain upon myself. So, unhealed trauma has a particular look, and so many things that we have touched on already. The symptoms of bullying, again, we're experiencing, this includes nightmares, avoidance, changes to stress response, negative changes in beliefs about self and others, cultural factors. Again, is the world a safe place or a friendly place? How to stand up against bullying? Now, this is not universal across the board, and some persons may not have the capacity to deal with
Mm-hmm.
or address these things because it requires support. And based on where you are in the chain of the events that you have experienced, you may not have the capacity to deal with it. I mean, you understand, we're just giving you the tools, right? Speak out, encourage victim to talk to a trusted adult, teacher, parent, or counselor. Stay calm and walk away. Not engaging can sometimes diffuse the situation in one context. However, the best form has been found that persons who engage tend to come out better, right? Whatever engagement looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be careful with whatever engagement looks
Yeah.
like. Document it. So in the workplace, if possible, document cyberbullying or verbal abuse. What we have found that when we write and we document what the behavior looks like and what the experience is, the bully tends to back off, because nobody likes the light to shine on them from a negative place. Because the bully, in some cases in the workplace, in all cases in the workplace, presents themselves to a different audience as ideal.
Right.
Right? So the person that you know and what you are experiencing, the person sitting right next to you may not be experiencing that same thing and may not be seeing that person function in that way.
Right.
For bystanders, be an ally. Teach students that bystanders have the power to support the victim by intervening or telling an adult. Report. Reporting the bully is not speaking, it's not telling, it's protecting someone. All right. So the virtue of, there's a saying that when they came for him, I said nothing. And when they came for me, there was nobody else to protect me. Yeah? So eventually somebody will come for you and you're one person to give it that support.
Mm-hmm.
How to eradicate it? Again, education is the key. Educate. Teach persons about the mental state of others, teach persons about power and control, teach persons about what the experiences are, what safe spaces are, what living actually looks like. Encourage reporting, promote kindness. Now, there are some research that say that fear is 5 times a greater motivator to change than kindness. But kindness has been found to be a more long-term endearing act to a person, right? So while you may think that you are a good leader by making persons feel afraid, the minute that they get a break out from that situation,
Yeah.
you will see how lonely and isolated you are.
Yeah.
So fear does not work long term, but in the short term, it may give the image as though you're doing well and better.
Right.
Monitor and evaluate. So all schools visited should be monitored and evaluated to ensure that guidelines are exercised and matters escalated. So again, no longer should we operate from the sake of for peace sake. Because while you do for peace sake, we found that we have catering to the bullies. In Trinidad, I'm not sure if you remember, right? The thing that we used to do culturally that says that if this child is bad behaved, then we make this child prefect. If this child is bad behaved on the sports team, they make this child captain. If this person is loudest, let me cater to the needs of this person. So we actually rewarded bad behavior.
Right.
And what we did to the number of victims is that we told them that you are actually voiceless and powerless in the situation. So what happened to you, maybe it's a bad thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but we say that that person is better. So in dealing with the situation, we actually empowered the abuser.
Probably trigger some memories there, but
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
back in the day.
But then back in the day, if you look now at our rate of domestic violence
Yeah.
and other societal ills,
All connected.
all connected.
Yep.
Nothing stands by itself. Everyone deserves a learning, peaceful environment. Therefore, it's the onus is on all of us to ensure that all of us have the same access to things that makes us better and well. Especially a child. A child who feels unsafe could never learn. And if that child learns systems to protect his or herself.
Right.
And when a child learns to protect himself with, that child carries throughout the lifespan. Right? Be it good or be it bad. How to assess as a student, stand for others, again for the staff, parents. As I would have said, talk to your children. Think about it this way. You have a 20-year-old child who you're going to hug for the first time. How would that child feel? That child will feel awkward.
Awkward. You might probably feel awkward trying to do it.
And you will feel awkward as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But it's not difficult.
No.
It's awkward.
Yeah.
So right now, the child next to you, or the child in your household, who you haven't spoken to for a while, or they think you're talking to, go and talk to them. The most you will feel is awkward, the child will feel awkward. But it's not a difficult conversation.
And you could overcome that awkwardness with that continued behavior.
Exactly. But it's really the myth of awkwardness, huh? But that's your child. That's your child. Talk to your child. So spot the signs, make the space safe, speak up. Model healthy behaviors. So again, find persons in the community, in the school, in the workplace that lives healthy, that shows what healthy leadership looks like, what healthy friendship looks like, right? And how adults can model healthy behavior, speak respectfully, set boundaries, apologize when wrong, stand up against unfair treatment, show kindness in every action. And when we model these things, again, we make persons think that even though I may have made a mistake, there's still a safe place for me to function and operate from and so. There are things that we try to do, which again, achieve physical balance, try to make sure you eat right, exercise, adequate rest, emotional balance, allow yourself to receive emotionally. So, sometimes I can say, Daren, you're dressing sharp. And you may say, well, this old clothes I went, but no longer had this. So I just give you a deposit and you then put it inside your emotional bank at all.
Yeah.
So imagine living daily and people handing you deposits
And you,
and you receiving nothing.
I hear
Then the first hit you get, a full slip and a full fall.
you.
Right? So take it in. You look beautiful, you look look nice, you look nice, you're healthy, you're strong. Right? Well, don't you not even mama guy, but still take it to Bong you said something, right? If it does not feel right, do not compromise on the boundary.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't feel right for a reason. Right? Do not convince yourself that this person who has this position should present well.
You should be allowed to be
Or
doing
should be
those
allowed
things.
to be
Yes.
this. Right? Spiritual life, if that's your thing, again, find your higher power, your higher base, and try to make sure that you connect with that situation and that circumstance. So if hurt people, then imagine what healed people would do. So in this world, if I see it as a friendly place, then I have to see that all of us capable of healing. And I have to see that even in our interactions, that I'm safe.
Yeah.
And if I'm not safe, I have the ability to put boundaries in place, settings in place to ensure that I can protect myself and others when the time comes for that. Maya Angelou said, and still we rise. All right. So, regardless of the situations and circumstances we face, the reason we having these conversations is because we cannot stay on the line of wellness. But under that line is sadness, depression, addiction. Above the line is the ability to live, to smile, to feel.
Yeah.
Support, again, National Parenting Hotline, Ministry of Education, Children Authority, the Victim of Witness Support Unit of Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, who actually do a lot of good work in terms of bullying, childhood intervention, in terms of dealing with all victims of crime throughout the country of Trinidad and Tobago. We Private Society of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mental Health Support, Psychiatric Department. I want to thank you for your time and for your space, and it was a pleasure. Thank you.
You know, before you actually jump out, there was one thing I wanted to touch on. You spoke about modeling behavior and finding that person to model against. You know, online you could find the wrong person to model against.
Yeah, that's the problem. Hence the reason why it has to be the parameters of safety.
So if you don't have the communication, the conversation,
Right.
then the kid's gonna have the communication conversation with Siri and Alexa and ChatGPT. And that model now is not the model that we look at.
Correct. Okay.
Ah, boy. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I mean, we knew that this was an important conversation to have, and certainly after both presentations, I feel like we might invite you back again. So thank you so much. I mean, I never thought about having a safety plan or what are the 5 things I will take into the room. So I'm sure that many of us are thinking about that now. So Mr. Pierre, thank you so much for your presentation, and we'll just move into some questions that we've gotten from the audience. So the first question that we have this afternoon is, well, the legal route. So what can a parent do via the legal route when all other measures at school have been unsuccessful? And anyone can opt with it. Yeah.
So from the legal perspective, you would have, of course, you're talking about personal legal advice and so on, right? From a cyberbullying perspective, generally what happens, and this goes even from the school as well as to the adults there, a simple thing as a pre-action protocol letter. This is you knowing who the victim is. I mean, the bully is, right? And most of the times we tend to know who the individual is. So again, if you're operating in a space where you feel that you could get away with everything, you will continue doing things. But I have seen through CyberSafeTT many times a simple thing as a pre-action protocol letter almost nullifies the situation. Then you can definitely go, okay, that doesn't work, you know, with your legal team, the cybercrime, the social media cybercrime unit. I say, listen, we have this information. We will be taking it, you know, to this particular level, and they will guide you accordingly, right? The fact that we actually had precedents set with respect to the Offences Against Persons Act, and individuals actually get in charge. You would have seen the headline in the article about, you know, students even being charged for cyberbullying. It means that the courts and the lawyers are aware of the approaches to deal with these. So I think we're in a good space with respect to that. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.
But I guess this one has to do with generally our culture around therapy, because someone has asked, why doesn't parents of bullies get counseling to deal with their children's behavior? I guess Kirk.
Yeah, and I know if you look at the process of modeling,
Yeah.
when you ask yourself, where does the child get the behavior from as well? So sometimes the model, unfortunately, is the parent. So the lack of awareness in terms of I am not okay also speaks to why the child behaves that way. And again, the ideology of superiority or power and control usually comes from the home. So that actually is something that is bred as a cultural base for how our household is run in particular. So the parents sometimes may not be the person to apply the consequences, because the parent may see that behavior as normative in themselves.
Correct, yeah.
So therapy may not be something that they see as effective for that.
Yeah.
I mean, based on your years of experience, is there still a stigma attached to going to therapy
With the younger generation, hardly,
with the younger generation?
Only with men and male boys, we still see
Some stigma attached.
some reluctance, right? But getting less and less and less.
Good. That's good to know.
Good, thank you. Another question here. What about children with late speech development? And how can they be supported in these types of situations?
So, of course, if you can't, express yourself in terms of I'm a victim, and this is happening to me, it's going to be a lot more difficult for that victim to really say, hey, I need some sort of assistance. I mean, from the technological perspective, within the platforms themselves, they can report and so on. But again, maybe it might be interesting to know in the online space, you don't need to have a voice per se, a physical voice, to be a victim. You just need to be present. So the same strategies that you would apply to someone who doesn't have those impediments, you will apply to someone who does.
But it's amazing though how police or perpetrators would have a 6 seconds to spot, even by your typing, even by your choice of language, choice of sentence construction, that you different to the rest. And that difference is just enough sometimes to come at you. And then based on your response, me coming at you, tells me that I come at you all the time.
I guess I just have one word: empathy. Because if we don't exhibit empathy, we wouldn't understand that, hey, that is not something that we should be engaged in. That's not behavior that we should be in. And you said it multiple times. It probably starts from home.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Someone else here, for someone who has been bullied before in like primary school, and they're now entering, I guess, secondary school, how do you help that person to adapt to their new school, having been bullied for many years in primary school?
Yeah. So again, the formation of myself. How does the ideal self function? Right? What support system support the child? Has the child been in some form of therapy or support system that allowed the child to recover from the experiences that the child would have had? Has the child have a sound sense of self? Now, at that age, probably 12, 13, the child may still be in a developmental phase that confidence is not there. Right? So the child needs extra support. I will say when they enter the school, let the staff know that this child has been through some experiences,
Coming with some history.
and the child needs additional support in terms of fitting in and in terms of what's happening, right? Again, teach the child to be vocal. And they see you in the first instance, and then the adults in the second instance. But the child needs to be able to say at some point in time what's happening. Parents, caregivers need to also observe. Right? So the child change appetite, sleeping habits change, the child doesn't want to go to school anymore, does the child have a difficulty making friends, some changes of what's happening that may be abnormal, that presents distress.
And the thing is that is not only characteristics of someone who has been bullied in primary school into secondary school. Because that full transition from primary school to secondary school alone is traumatic. So all of those strategies will apply regardless of whether you had a history or not.
Correct.
Absolutely. Well, I think you gentlemen answered one of the other questions in terms of what can parents look out for in terms of their changes in behavior and so on. So another question here, I have a teenage son in secondary school, and what are some tips for male single parents raising teenage boys in this context? Yeah, I know we talk a lot about
Well, I have a teenage son in secondary school, so maybe I might be most appropriate to make a response, right? It's difficult. Let's start with that. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. It's difficult because if you haven't had a history of conversation, then when trauma or problems happen, it's even more difficult to have the difficult conversation. So with the parents, with, gentlemen, right, whether in primary school or secondary school, start having that conversation now, because having easy conversations is already difficult to do, much less having the hard ones. Look at the changes in behavioral patterns. And as males, speaking with other males, you tend to have just a natural way of asking something without asking something. To a certain extent, you might even want to treat the teenage son as your partner. It's like, yo, kind of come across not as a father, but as a friend, but understanding where that line has to be drawn. And if you're lucky to be in a two-parent household, you also have assistance from the mom. So, it's not just a male scenario. So, I mean, that's one of the approaches. To me, it's conversation and communication. I think that is the solution to so many different problems that we have. And if you're not accustomed to having it on a regular, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to have it when you actually need to have it.
Yeah, I'm going to share, and find out at this stage as well, the teenage son may not see you as the authority for social issues. So the friends will have more say than you. So you have to have the confidence, assertiveness, kindness, and grace to still involve yourself in that child's life.
Use your own past experiences. Remember that. That's one thing that ChatGPT not going to tell us.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely. Well, I know up front, Kirk would have mentioned that we are, number 3, as it relates to suicides in this context. So someone has asked here, what is the reason for the different types of bullying? And more so, why has it taken such a prominent role in the Trinbagonian society or Caribbean society?
You want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so I think the role has changed because we have grown. We have grown and no longer see these things as funny. Sometimes boy tease girl and we say, the boy just like you. No,
Right.
bullying you, harassing you, that is not appropriate. Right? So all these cultural shifts that we have made, now recognizing that, okay, these things that were traditionally funny before have actually done a lot of harm to persons moving forward.
So to a certain extent, adapting cultures that were not really local to us. That's the thing.
Well, it may be a bit local to us, but we have now started to adopt more evidence-based practices into our system.
Gotcha.
Right? We now sort of consider not the perception of how this makes me feel, but the perspective of how this makes me feel and how this may make others around me feel. But now have a more accurate view as to the perspective as to what is actually happening.
Do we need to change our culture?
We need to adopt some things. If you check even our music culturally as adopted, because I remember calypsos in the 50s and 60s that have spoken about domestic violence, very
Casual.
casual. Now that is not necessarily part of the music anymore.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, this question is from John. John has asked if we can suggest a pattern-stopping sentence or phrase that we can equip ourselves as it relates to what do you say to stop a bully? Yeah.
Stop, block, and tell is the strategy. So in terms of how you can stop, like you're talking about empowering words,
Yes.
right? Something that would not make you also come across as a bully, but also present that air of, hey, you need to empathize with me. I might be going through something at this point in time. So don't come across that. Let's have a different sort of, conversation. I mean, what would be a key phrase?
Yeah, so it depends on a number of things. Again, the person's assertiveness, the person's exposure, the other protective factors the person in place. Some persons come from households that they have limited protective factors. So their protective factors is fight, flight, or freeze. So you either fight with you,
Right.
I run away, or I freeze and hope that you don't see me at all. So I act invisible. And that has been found from a psychological perspective to be a natural human response to crisis or to threat. right? So the bully should say something. I've learned that person sometimes had to be trained to say something.
Yeah, yeah, and have some level of confidence, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've read as well. Bullies come from also a place of hurt. Right? They might be projecting a particular persona, but they also hurt. So maybe if you can kind of reach them at that level as well. I mean, I don't know.
So good point. So the new research has found that that may not necessarily accurate,
Right.
although that has been traditional behavior, right? Bullies tend to operate, so empathy is typically actually around them.
Ah,
So if you compare with empathy, empathy, they actually smell goodness. That's why child listening to speech issue and lady development issue, right? Because of prime tactic for bullying. Because of the kind of
and so the bully might not have any
no,
prior, nothing at all.
Just
I hear you.
over control.
Yeah.
What they do respond to, though, we have found is situations of consequences. So things that affect them.
Right.
So things that affect you, I don't care about. If something affects me, then I'm not going to this.
So maybe the victim needs to do a little bit of research, kind of see what might, I mean, you wouldn't even want to trigger the bully because then that might aggravate the situation even
For
more.
support.
You're looking for support.
Lots of systems.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Good. And gentlemen, this is the last question. My son is small in body size, and I think a lot of people, a lot of parents are usually very concerned in this regard. How can I help him cope? Because when you go into school, you're not going with your parents,
I knew you addressed that during the conversation,
Yeah.
so take it away.
So again, size, a vocal child, again, with
More
one
than that.
size,
Yeah.
it's still an able child to it's that word. A big child with the size that is still going to be a victim of bullying. The some of these fears have been parents that have been put upon the child. Right, but most of the time, we have a trait or characteristic that is inherent that makes them popular
Mhm.
by people. So giving the child the information as to what to do, and then speed up the child, carries himself in the environment that creates an education. Move from that place, and then to try to pick what to happen to the child. And then if you give the child feeling, and then another child feeling, then you feel it.
And probably don't even exist.
Don't exist.
Yeah.
Probably
It doesn't exist.
Right? So the size thing is not necessarily an indicator for me or being good to believe. It's more so the inability to speak up for yourself. Right? Or you have other struggle that may make you go again in a school where you are financially disadvantaged. If you have a learning disability, someone with a disability that person's good. Real yeah, those who have been going to be greater factors for persons to exhibit power and control, make themselves powerful.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you both so much. I mean, I think we could stay here and probably continue this conversation for hours at end, right? But we've come to the end of the session tonight. We are at 6:38. We'd like to thank the audience for their questions. And also, I mean, thank you, Daren, and thank you, Kirk. I mean, this has been a really rich conversation, a conversation that we shall all have within our households, with friends, within our organizations, and so on. And we really are happy to have both of you here just to share your thoughts and some really practical tips as to how do we deal with bullying, how do we recognize bullying, how do we respond to it, not only as children, but as parents, as colleagues, and so on. And so it's a conversation that we need to continue to have. So I want to at least, just tell you again, thank you so much. I think that we will definitely have you back. For persons who have missed this, I'm sure when they see the speaker notes and when they see the videos and so on, they'll definitely realize that they've missed some good information. So again, I want to thank the audience for joining us. This is yet another webinar that we continue to do every 2 months or so, just empowering our members and by extension, the public. Thank you to John specifically and Lisa, members of our business development team, who have done such a great job in putting all of this together. It would not have been the success it has been without their hard work. So thank you guys for your support. Thank you to the IT team, particularly Jason, who would have supported in setting up for today as well. And just thank you to the entire management team and members of CLICO Credit Union who see the benefits of having such important conversations. So we thank you all and look forward to another series, right, of our CCU empowerment webinar sessions. Everyone have a good evening. For those of you who are not at home yet, travel safely and get home safely. Thank you. I'm Ritza De Silva from CLICO Credit Union. Take care.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, brother.
Excellent. Yeah, man.
Good job, guys. Very nice.